Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Peanut City Police. And today we are joined by members of our K-9 unit. So gentlemen, can you go ahead and introduce yourselves?
I'm Master Police Officer Shane Sukowaski.
And I'm Master Police Officer Sean Powell.
All right, well thank you both so much for joining us today. So let's get right into it. Why did each of you want to become a K-9 officer handler?
All right, so it's gonna sound kind of corny, but when I was a kid, there was a show called Rin Tin Tin, K-9 Cop. I always liked animals, and I was like a police officer or a vet. And then I saw this show and I was like, wow, I can work with dogs and be a police officer. So that drew my interest, and that's what I kind of landed on, wanting to do. I joined the military with hopes of being a handler in the military. And due to a hearing issue, I lost my rate, wound up doing a different job, got out, and I met with a recruiter here and found out how the K-9 unit was set up in Suffolk and decided to come here. And then 6 years after, wound up on the K-9 unit and done the best job I've ever had.
So I actually started in 2014. I'll make sense in a second. But I got to work a lot with our K-9 handlers and patrol. And I joined our search and rescue team in 2018, so I got to work with the search and rescue dogs for the Virginia Department of Emergency Management. And it kind of inspired me. So when the first opportunity that I could apply, which was actually 2021, I was able to apply for the K-9 unit and got to Bloodhound, which is a very unique, which we'll talk about later, for the unit.
Awesome.
Okay, and can you tell us about your K-9 and what you specialize in?
All right, so my current K-9 is K-9 Savo. He's a Belgian Malinois that's from Poland. He's 8 years old. He is the unit's oldest dog. He specializes in patrol. I trained him on locating firearms. And patrol encompasses tracking, building searches, area searches, searches for evidence, and apprehension work.
I have Scout. He's a 3-year-old bloodhound. He turned 4 in March. He's actually from Farmville, Virginia, from Hardeman Hounds. They donated him to our department. And he specializes in trailing. So trailing is you use an item like if MPO Sukowaski left his tie behind, I can have him sniff the tie, and all our odors are unique. He'll know to go after just that odor, so we do what's a lot called scent discrimination. Because the bloodhounds have 300 million scent receptors, so they can break it down. So when you smell lasagna, he can tell you all the cheeses in it and the meats. So what that makes him a really powerful dog, because that's what the breed naturally does. He's the first bloodhound we've had in the unit since the 70s. And because of that training, he's doing a combination of sniffing off the ground, sniffing the air to find that person. And he can do much older trails that are aged much older. Like he has a find that's 7.5 hours old.
Yeah, and since you all have not only different dogs, but they specialize in different things, can you talk a little bit about what the training looks like for you and the K-9 as well?
All right, so on the patrol K-9 side, we either we train with several different agencies. It just depends on where we're going at the time. So either Norfolk PD, Chesapeake PD, or Newport News PD. It's a 4 to 5 month long patrol school where they're teaching the dog you start with obedience, right? The foundation of all of the patrol work is obedience. So you start obedience, agility, apprehension work, learning to engage human beings. You do tracking, which is a little different than the trailing. Tracking, we're starting with ground disturbance and human odor. And then article searches. So if a suspect's running, or more commonly, suspect's running, an officer's chasing them and loses a piece of equipment along the foot pursuit, we can come back with the dog and they will locate the items that were dropped because they're looking for items with recent human odor on them. And then building searches, so it's quicker and safer for our officers if a dog goes in and searches the building.
So we start with, a lot of us start with an 8 to 12-week-old puppy. So, and we basically start very short where we'll do different problems where the person will cheer them up, give them a scent article, and run a short distance. But we start increasing that distance and adding turns in, or where they're starting out of sight. So you just keep on building that picture. You increase the distances. You change the terrain you're doing, who you're looking for. You do different scent articles. Sometimes we get creative. MPO Sukowaski did a piece of gum one time for Scout to find. So you just keep working on that to give them as many different type of pictures so they get more proficient at finding people for the bloodhound side. And we also do environmental training, take them into stores sometimes, because we don't want any aggression on our side. Because if we're looking for, say, the 4-year-old, it's great to be able to just let the bloodhound go directly to that person. And Scouts found people as young as 8 before, so it's very important on that aspect of it.
Okay. And what does the life of outside of work look like for both you and your canine?
When we leave work, they come home with us. Each dog's a little different. My first dog, Vigo, when we got home, he knew we were home, and he shut it off and was part of the family from the very beginning. So if we were outside doing something as a family, he was there with us. Once he retired, he moved into the house, became just a full-time pet. Then I got Salvo. When I got Salvo, Salvo was very work-focused. When we were home, he didn't shut it off. If I took him near a vehicle, he would be trying to search for drugs. If anyone came nearby, he was very protective of me. So it took probably 2 years for him to learn when we're home and his vest is off, he gets to be a normal dog. Once that light switch went on for him, it made the home life for him a lot nicer. He got to be outside with the rest of us, interact with our other dogs. Since January of last year, he's been actually living in the house with me and my family because he's slated to retire this year. And when I retired my first dog, Vigo, it was a very abrupt working one day, medical issue, no longer working, and it was very hard for him to transition into house life. So I slowly transitioned Salvo into being fully integrated into the house, and now when I'm at home, he's hanging out in the house with me and my family, listens to my wife and son, gets along with my other animals. So he's full-time police officer, full-time house dog when he gets home, which is, it's nice. It was a lot of work, but they work. They're out here protecting us every day. So being able to give them a life outside of the police department where they get to relax and have a good time, they earn it.
So Scout is a very high energy for a bloodhound. So a lot of times we're doing hikes and runs. So, you know, I'll take them to different parks sometimes, even on duty, because it's great to have that presence of a police officer walking through the parks and whatnot when different people are out there. But he loves just always exploring with his nose. Everything he's looking at, it's very natural his breed. He's sniffing everything. He wants to check out everything until he's in that, as I call it, work mode, where he's like, all right, now I'm going to focus on the single odor to find this person. But that's one of the things I like to do with him. It's good for him, healthy for me too, keep me exercising. But you know, that's our favorite things to do, is just walking, hiking, and even going on runs.
I want to talk about something here that you just mentioned, how Salvo is protective over you. And I think that's common with a lot of dogs, right? But when you spend every moment, you know, working, and especially in a job like this, can you just talk about that a little bit? Because when you're out with other officers on the street, y'all are hopefully protecting each other and watching each other's back. But when it's your dog, and you know he's going to protect you first, right? Can you just talk about that bond?
Right. I've always been a dog guy. I've had personal dogs. I had a German Shepherd before going to canine. There's a much stronger bond with your working dog because you literally spend 8 hours a day driving around with them in the car. When it comes to law enforcement, like, we always have each other's back, but you know when you have a canine that they're always there, right? And we have a button on our vest that if something really crazy happens, I hit the button and out comes my partner to protect me. That's one of the big things that they're trained on, is handler protection. So their primary focus when they're not out of the car with us is, where's my dad? They're looking at us. So if something chaotic happens, they get kind of worked up. But they like to be focused on us. So when if you need to hit the button, they're trained to come right to us. It often is a big de-escalation tool, right? When we have a chaotic scene, there's people not cooperating, and one of us show up with a dog, just the sight of the vehicle kind of calms people down, or walking the dog on scene. People kind of calm down, take a step back. It's a force multiplier for us, right? The presence of a canine unit is the equivalent of 3 or 4 officers as opposed to having to have 5 officers on scene. We can have 1 officer on a perimeter with a handler and a canine, and that cuts down on manpower usage, but it also increases the sense of safety for us, but the other patrol guys as well. They often say, like, hey, Suko, when you show up with Salvo, we always feel better, like we're safer because you guys are here.
Nice, yeah.
And can you talk about the different dog breeds that we have on our canine unit and what each of them do?
So we have different dog breeds from German Shepherds, Dutch Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, and the unit right now, we have Officer Prevet. He has a canine crash. He's trained in patrol and explosives detection. And then we have Officer Kirk Carter. He has Ace, who is trained in patrol. And then we have Officer Goff, who has a Goff. His dog, his name is Dunny, and his dog is trained in patrol and narcotics detection. And we already talked about myself and P.O. Sukowaski.
You forgot Scout, but we also have a Bloodhound Scout, where you're currently training a lab to be a department therapy dog. They're not on the canine unit per se, but they do train with us. And we have a lab that we're currently trying to train for single-purpose narcotics detection as well. So we have a whole variety of dogs. Back in the day, it was only German Shepherds, and now we've kind of moved towards the Malinois because they're smaller, they're healthier, they have a lot more drive. But then when it comes to a more like community-oriented position for the therapy dog, the labs work out very well. They're much more approachable.
For sure. And why do you think it's so important to have a canine unit, especially here at Suffolk Police Department?
The dogs can do things that we as human beings cannot do. Their olfactory senses are so much better, and I'm sure Sean knows the numbers on how much better they are, but they can smell things that we don't. Sean referenced lasagna earlier, right? I often reference a pizza shop. When we walk into a pizza shop, we smell pizza, right? And you're like, oh wow, it smells really good. I walk in the pizza shop with my dog, and he smells the dough. He smells the flour and the water that make up the dough. He smells the tomato, all the seasonings. Like, they break down odors so much smaller than us. So we can train them to find specific odors, narcotics, or we're adding explosive dogs to the department recently. They can smell the components used to make bombs and find them when we cannot, right? We can't smell gunpowder in a bag, right? If there's a bag lying in the room and there's a bomb in it, we can't walk in and go like, yep, there's a bomb in here, right? But we bring the dog in, and they learn that there's this fun game they get to play where they find a certain odor, and they get a toy and they get to play with Dad. So what they want to do when they hear the certain command is, oh, well, I got to go look for it. So then I get my toy, I get to play with Dad and have a good time. They don't realize, like, you're saving lives, you're finding bombs, or you're getting drugs off the street. They're just having a good time with it. I touched on the force multiplier aspect, right? When the canine handlers show up, there's the sense of protection for other officers. Citizens often comment about, we've seen the Suffolk canine units growing. We feel a lot better knowing that there's more dogs out protecting us. They find evidence when suspects run and they throw, especially firearms, out into the community. It's a danger to everyone in the community, right? If a child walks by and finds this gun, they start trying to play with it, someone can get hurt or killed. So when humans can't find it because there's tall grass, we can bring the dog out and they could search a backyard in a minute or less, when we would have to walk line by line, and it would take us 10, 15 minutes to search a single yard. The dog can do it in 1 or 2, right? So they save us on time. It's much more efficient, and the amount of guns that Salvo has found in the last 8 years has kept lots of children safe. They also, tracking and trailing, yes, we track and trail suspects, right? But the most satisfying part to me is tracking or trailing a runaway. We found a 6-year-old that ran away, and then an 83-year-old woman with dementia who had wandered off and could have died from hypothermia had we not found her, right? So I would never have been able to find her just by following the odor on the ground, right? The dogs have this ability that we cannot.
I think the citizens appreciate too. I mean, I even had a call one time where someone's child ran off and they asked specifically because they had heard of the bloodhound, about getting the bloodhound. And thankfully that they actually found the child before I even got there. But you know, the citizens are aware of the different dogs out there and they appreciate what the dogs can do as a force multiplier to find their child or their loved one quicker, or find evidence, or help protect the community.
Yeah, I always joke that if I wander off and get lost, I need Sean and Scout to show up, right? The other dogs are great at tracking, but Sean and Scout are phenomenal. And something that's not seen, right? Sean and Scout can show up and they can start doing the track, and then we will follow with patrol dog. So we're looking for a violent subject, right? Scout is going to find them, but he might not apprehend them if the need arises, where he goes, hey, we're close, and then the patrol team can step up and take over. We work very well together. We do it in training on a regular basis so that the dogs learn to leave each other alone, and it's just, Scout helps Salvo find the reward at the end.
That's cool. Is there anything else that you guys want to talk about as far as K-9 assisting you with your day-to-day police activities?
I know for me, it's great having them on duty. You know, we've had situations where, you know, someone went over a mile away from the house in an urban environment. By urban, I mean you got roads, you got apartment complexes, all these shopping centers. You know, so I've been in a situation where he trails for over 1.3 miles and ends up finding the people. So you imagine the manpower it would take with all those officers driving around, trying to check the different apartments, trying to check all the businesses, how much longer that would take versus I do it in 20 minutes, you know, to find that person. So, you know, it really helps. And like my favorite thing was like, you know, to look for people. I've been on the search and rescue team. You know, I like to look for wanted people when I was a patrol officer. You know, it's great when that person runs away. And sometimes the officers know that too. So when they start doing a bunch of trap stops or, you know, certain investigations looking for wanted people, they'll call for a canine unit. Like, hey, can you tag along with us? Even the bloodhound, because, you know, if the person runs, it's a powerful tool to find the person. We don't immediately find them when that happens. So, you know, and even talking about articles, you know, with the tandem too, where he described where the patrol dog was behind, sometimes you'll run the patrol dog behind to look for articles because they can find items. So, you know, while scouts running the trail, they're looking to see, did that guy toss that gun we want to find so it doesn't end up in the community, or the drugs. And sometimes Scout will find them too, you know, because he'll check it out because that person's odor is associated with it. But you imagine going to court and being like, hey, I used to send an article from the scene and identified this person. So that's a big deal when you go to court and you testify this. And I have yet to have a situation where a suspect tried to contest my trail in court. So a lot of times they don't even fight it because they're like, well, you know, the dogs are so good at what they do.
That's good.
The other thing that a lot of people don't realize, and maybe some handlers don't realize it themselves, is when your dog is in the car, like we go to a lot of high stress calls or things the average citizen doesn't go to. We don't need to come back here and see a therapy dog, right? Your partner's right there, and there's science behind it, right? When you pet a dog, it releases serotonin in your brain, and it helps cope, right? There are many times where, like having a bad shift or something, you just slide the door open and you got your dog right there, right? That it helps immensely.
Wow.
It's something a lot of officers don't recognize.
Oh, wow.
I have like a permanent slobber stain from him doing that to me.
Yep.
You know, because he'll just sit there and put his head on my shoulder while we're driving around, or someone will pull up next to us and they'll start laughing because they see the bloodhound like looking at them while he's hanging out with me in the front of the car.
Yeah, when we're driving around, because there's a door, the dog can actually be right up front with us. And the reactions are quite funny when you're driving by or you're sitting at a red light and your dog's up there and you're scratching his head, or he's looking around and then you're like some kids all pointing all excited. Yeah, I think it's a good also bridge to the community for especially children. Children love dogs, right? Even the children who are kind of nervous around the police, they love dogs. So oh, hey, can I see your dog? For the patrol dogs, they unfortunately can't pet them. But Sean and Scout, you know, they can get out and interact with citizens. So I think it's a good bridge to community interactions.
Absolutely. I think just about everyone loves dogs. So
Yes.
I think you can love both aspects, is that it's a cute dog, but it's also helping keep Suffolk safe.
Right.
Awesome. Well, just last question here. Is there anything else that either of you would like to add that maybe we haven't talked about or touched on yet?
The work of the canine handler, right? We're work an 8-hour shift, but that doesn't end when we punch out, right? Like I said, we take our dogs home with us. Well, we walk them while they're out at the house. We feed them, we bathe them. Like, we're responsible for the veterinary care, grooming, every aspect of owning a dog comes back to the handler as well. And a lot of people just think like, oh, it's a job. It's not a job. It's a lifestyle. You commit to the life of that dog, right? Like, I have Vigo, my retired shepherd. He's 11. Salvo's retiring. He's 8. He's moving into the house with me. I have a personal dog, and then I'm currently training a new dog that should be certified end of March, sometime in April. It adds work, so to speak, but it's not really work to us because we enjoy what we do. But it also isn't just the handler, right? Our families are involved in this. My son helps me train the new dog to track people. They help me take care of my retired dogs when I need to go to training, or while I'm at work and the retired dog's at home. That falls upon my family. So a lot of people think like, oh, it's just a job, but it really isn't. It's a lifestyle choice. It also kind of holds you into that position on the department, right? It's a commitment. You have to think before moving to canine, like, do I want to do anything else on the department? Because for the next 7 to 10 years, depending on the dog's life and workability, you are in that position, right? Promotion kind of comes off the table, but we love what we do, so we keep, I mean, at least for me, I keep working dogs, right? I got this new dog, and I had said to my wife, I don't think I'm going to take another dog. She's like, you're not going to like going back to patrol. This is your job. Like, why wouldn't you? And I don't want to be selfish and work another dog and add another dog to our house. She's like, no, it's your job. It's not being selfish. So.
Yeah, I have to say my wife has always been super supportive of this because it takes a lot of time. So, Sukowaski mentioned his wife. I have to say my wife and my family's been very supportive of this because it's a family commitment. You have this dog at the house, you're changing schedules. And something that MPO Sukowaski didn't mention out, sometimes we'll get called out. So, a person, if none of us are working or you need a specific specialty, so maybe that specialty that the dog's trained in isn't working at that time, we'll get called. I've been called at 2, 4 a.m. in the morning and come into work to help find somebody, So, we are very dedicated to this. And most of the canine handlers in the unit are also part of ancillary units and other teams, or they're already a part of a specialized unit, like we talked about the narcotics side with our newer dog that's in training. A lot of us are very dedicated to the department and trying to help out as much as we can, especially with our dog. Like me being on the search and rescue team, when the search and rescue team gets activated, Scout's come along too.
And that's not just in Suffolk, right? Scout and MPO Powell often leave the city to go assist other jurisdictions. We all do, but I think Scout and MPO Powell get called more than the rest of us because it is an asset that there aren't many bloodhounds regionally. They're increasing, but it's not every jurisdiction has a bloodhound, right? Not every jurisdiction has explosive detection dogs, or it takes a lot of dogs to clear a school. So surrounding jurisdictions will call us, but we also rely on other jurisdictions to help us. So it's a very close-knit community as canine, and we reach out and get assistance from each other on a regular basis.
And I think the other thing too is we train with a lot of these other jurisdictions. So we get to see like what are they doing? Do we want to incorporate that into our training? So we are very big on like seeing what everybody's doing so that we can take those things to improve our dog and improve our unit. It's a very good mindset to have to prevent just doing the same thing just because we've been doing it.
There's a lot of training. We train weekly with the dogs as a unit, but there's also, while you're on duty, you train. As I said, my son helps me at home. So when we're at home, we're training. There's a lot of training that goes into keeping the dogs up to the standard that we've come to expect, but the citizens and the chief of police that comes to expect from the Suffolk Canine Unit. People call it work. Like, I'm like, man, I can't believe they're paying me to do this, right?
Well, that's awesome. And thank you both for joining us today. I think you offered a lot of insight into what exactly the K-9 unit does here in Suffolk, so I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for watching this week's episode, and we'll see you next week.